Hello everybody, welcome back to the InnCoCells podcast. Actually, this is a continuation of the last podcast because we have lots more to discuss with John from EPSO. So we're going to carry on where we left off. And John, would you like to pick up where we left off?
That would be great, yeah. Very happy to do so, Richard.
So let's talk about the stakeholder group because it's actually a very important part of the project, and this is one of EPSO's jobs in the project. It is in my work package, but it's not really my domain. It was written in the proposal that it's EPSO's job to organise and run the stakeholder group. So perhaps you could say a little bit about what the stakeholder group is, what its value is to the project, and how it was set up.
Yeah, I think the stakeholder group really is there to serve as a sort of sounding board for the project partners as the activities go along. It's comprised currently of around about 16 members, so almost the same size as the consortium working on the project, which I think is interesting. I don't think it's a closed shop. I think more partners can certainly come on board. And these partners will essentially be from industry, although not exclusively. So you've got some big names in there like Chanel, La Prairie in France. There's a whole range. It's all listed on the website. Essentially, the stakeholder group is there to provide advice and guidance to the project, to monitor the progress, to help and give its insights to the activities or the difficulties or challenges that the project is facing, to really sort of be there as a sort of good advisor to the project, and potentially there will be an opportunity for that relationship to become closer as the project reaches its final stages. So as these cosmetic products start to see the light of day, maybe there's an opportunity for all of those partners to get involved in the commercialization of those products at the right time further down the line.
I should say, actually, while on that subject, so La Prairie, we had at the Cosmetic 360, we had a representative from La Prairie on the panel with the InnCoCells people. So it wasn't just InnCoCells partners who were on this roundtable discussion. We had one of our stakeholder group people there too, giving their perspective, which was very good because the Cosmetic 360 is an industry event. And so that was a very useful and valuable bridge to have between the audience and the project.
And EPSO's role really with regard to the consortium is to act as the bridge between the partners and the stakeholder group to ensure that they feel part and parcel and connected to the project, and that the InnCoCells partners at the same time have an opportunity to engage with that particular specialist advisory board effectively.
Yeah.
So EPSO is really the link between those two parties.
So you've described very nicely what EPSO does, its role in the project. And you have described you called it a baptism of fire, which is a very interesting turn of phrase. So I have to now ask you, because of that, the way you described that, how did you get involved in the project in the first place? Because it sounds a bit like you were dropped in from a great height and you had to sort of like find your feet extremely quickly in unfamiliar territory.
Well, I mean, my role at EPSO is publications officer, so you would expect, therefore, to be involved in the projects. We have another project coming on stream in the new year, so this is sort of a central activity for that publications officer. So we're very much sort of engaged with that. I mean, when I say baptism of fire, what I really mean is, it was something coming from a non-scientific background, non-plant science background. The challenge is that bit greater, isn't it, when you're sort of working on something very, very specific. I mean, how do you find that, being a non-plant scientist yourself, working with these specialists who are so steeped in the subject matter?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I don't know if you could call me a plant scientist or not. I mean, I worked at the John Innes Centre as officially a postdoc, but it's a very interesting story actually. Maybe I'll go in some detail. So I did a degree and a PhD in molecular biology, and I won't say I struggled with my PhD, but I was never a natural in the laboratory. I was just sort of like it was something I had to do, but I found out very quickly that I wasn't have green fingers in terms of being a researcher. So then I did a postdoc in Cambridge. And when you go from being a PhD student to being a postdoc, then the whole atmosphere changes because you're expected to perform. And I was still woefully inadequate in the laboratory. So I realised very quickly that a research career was not my destiny. But what I did find out was that I enjoyed writing about science. So I saw this job advertised at the John Innes Centre for scientific writer. So at that point, yes, I was not a plant scientist. My PhD was basically about the nervous system, and the postdoc was in a neurobiology lab in Cambridge, so it was the LMB, or the site of Adam Brooks Hospital. So going to the John Innes Centre, then it, like you say, very steep learning curve, because I suddenly had a whole new field to learn very quickly, because I was expected to write about it, but I knew what a plant was, but not the detailed molecular biology, etc. If you know molecular biology, you can apply it to any organism, but there is a specialised sort of like ontology for each type of mammals and insects and plants and fungi, whatever. So I worked at the John Innes Centre for about 4 years it was technically a postdoc position, but I was basically a scientific writer. And then the guy who ran the lab, he got offered a job in Germany, offered me the position there too, but my kids at that point were just starting school. It was a choice between them or the job, but it didn't have to be a choice, because we came to an agreement that I would just basically, I was writing papers and whatever, help with writing stuff like that, and it could be done at home. So then I started working at home instead of going into the lab, and that was 25 or getting on 30 years ago. So it's never changed really. So everything I've done with scientific communication from then has been, the seed was that move from the John Innes Centre to working at home. That's when I set up the company, so I could basically run a business doing it rather than just being a gun for hire sort of thing. That's how it started, and it's still going today.
An early exponent of teleworking.
Basically, yeah. So it's been a very interesting journey, because I've sort of failed as a scientist in terms of research scientist, but my career has not been damaged by that. In fact, I'd say, because I work with lots of different people and work on lots of different topics, when you're a researcher, you become very, your focus is so narrow, you become the world's best expert on something, the work you're doing. Whereas I'm sort of like a lot lower down that spectrum, but it's a lot broader, because I get people all over the world send me their papers to tidy up, and they could be on any subject, usually biological sciences, but it can be even more diverse than that. So it's been a very interesting job, and the branching out into doing the communication for projects means that then it's not just writing papers, and it's like you say, it's doing the videos and doing these podcasts and doing website text and press releases and leaflets and all. You've got to write to different levels. You've got to know your audience. You've got to be able to write a document which will tell a high-level research scientist what's going on. So you use that kind of technical language, but you might then have to write the same information for the general public. You can't patronise them, but you've got to make sure that you're not blinding them with jargon as well. But you can present the same information to both audiences. You just have to write it in a certain way to make it intelligible to them.
My background into this as well, prior to working for UPSO, was I ran a regional office here for 15 years, Southern local partners, and then Hampshire, working for Hampshire County Council. And during that last tranche of time working for them, I was the project coordinator for an Interreg Europe project around internationalisation of SMEs. And it gave me it's interesting now working on a Horizon project and the different emphases of these projects and the way they're sort of structured and the objectives and the goals. The Interreg Europe project was very much around sort of strengthening policy. Mm-hmm. We were working with business intermediaries, regional governments, stakeholders to influence policy at a regional level in terms of business support measures to enable more SMEs to take their businesses internationally. We developed a toolkit as part of that particular project. And these projects become all consuming, don't they? Because you get immersed in the sort of day to day of the project, even if you're only meeting up every sort of 3 or 4 months. Nonetheless, the project kind of takes over you, doesn't it? I mean, it becomes all consuming. And I just wondered, we were very lucky in that particular project, because during one of our workshops, we had the European Commissioner for Enterprise and Industry. This was during the last commission, Elizabeta Bienkowska, come along and kick off one of our midterm conference. And that was a real coup, because there was something like 20 of these projects within the SME competitiveness strand of this particular Interreg Europe programme. And that opportunity simply doesn't present itself very, very often. So, but at the same time, you think your project is worthy of that, because you're doing great stuff and you're very committed, and all the partners are fully on board with the direction of the project. So my question to you, therefore, is how would you go about sort of ensuring that your sure project partners don't become too consumed by the activities of the project and are able to step back and show a sort of element of sort of detachment from the project, if that's the right way of sort of looking at it. Because, as I say, these projects do become sort of, they take on their own life form and become all consuming.
Yeah. I think, well, this is a very interesting question because I've not really looked at it like that before. This is the point of having a good management structure in a project, because you have to have a focus on the goals that you've been set, but you do have to have the bigger picture, because you could, for instance, in a worst case scenario, have a project like this one with 16 partners all doing their own thing and never really talking to each other. And then, especially if everyone's set up their work so that they get something out of the project, and it doesn't really matter so much what everybody else does, because they join the project but they actually want to do something. They're going from position A to position B, and if they get to position B, they're happy for themselves. So a lot of it, I think, starts with the planning of the project. And the good thing about a lot of these Horizon projects is that they have interdependencies. So you have, in this project, for example, you've got partners who are growing the plants or the plant cell cultures or the hairy roots, or they are establishing the cultures from scratch. Then you've got another set of partners who take that work and they scale it up. So they start off with something in a 2-litre shape flask, and what they are aiming to do in the project is get you to 500 litres and still have the same molecules being produced. So they can't do anything without the first set of guys producing the small scale cultures. However, the way we set this project up, interestingly, is that we had some which were already at a higher scale. So the guys who were going to do the scaling up didn't sort of sit around for 2 years waiting for the first set of results to come through. They could already start with some material. So they were all working from day one. But as the project has gone on, this earlier set of material has now come to the point where it can be scaled up. So it's being passed down the line. And then we've got another set which were already at large scale at the beginning of the project. And by large scale, I mean like 500 litre cultures or 100 metres squared of aeroponic plants. And those can be given to the next section of the chain, which is the extraction, to get the ingredients out. So otherwise you'd have a situation where the people who are last in the line in the project in terms of where the products get to would be waiting for almost the entire length of the project to get something to work with. So we had sort of like staggered approach where everyone could start on day one with something. And this is excellent because it means that everyone's got a job, but as the project matures, there's things being passed along. So then you have no excuse not to interact, communicate, and not get too focused on your own little world. You have to see the bigger picture and see what's coming through. And I even forgot to mention the next important part of the chain, which is the testing, of course. So you want all these people communicating with each other, feeding material along the line, and then we come to the commercialization aspects, and they obviously need the information from all the testing in order to make the things like regulatory documents and stuff like that, to take the product to the final stage, which is of course when the companies can commercialize them. And overarching all of this, we've got the project management, making sure everything's ticking along nicely and making sure everyone's working together, and us doing the communication. We are the all-seeing eye from inside the project, seeing what's going on, and our job is to let everybody else know how it's all fitting together. I think it's quite a nice role.
Do you think it's important to remember that the project success is everyone's success, not just the coordinators, and that everyone should, all the funding agents, and that everyone should share in this equally?
That goes without saying, because I mean, there's no point having a project where you've only got some winners. The idea is this is a collaborative venture. We've got 16 organisations now, and we want everyone to come out of this with something positive to say. Otherwise, there's no point having them in the project at all, because the idea is that everyone benefits in some way from the project. So let me just turn the tables on you for a second. EPSO is in exactly the same position. What are you trying to get out of the project? What do you want to achieve from your organisational perspective? I mean, we've got 2 years left, so plenty of time, but you must have some idea of what you want to achieve from the project.
We want to enhance our knowledge in this important field. We want to work with some great partners to further our reputation, to broaden our horizons, to sort of give our organisation visibility at the European level. That goes both ways, both up to the funding, the EU institutional level, but equally out to the partners and the dissemination of the project to the wider world. So keeping EPSO's name in the frame as a significant organisation and association that can help its member organisations achieve their European goals is very important for us, and some of those partners are involved directly as partners in the project. So that's great stuff. So it's continuing to show that we are both hands-on as well as dealing with policy. So getting involved in the tangible sort of project work is really important for us as well, and we'll continue to do that. We have a new project starting, a Horizon Europe project starting in the new year, and we're very much looking forward to that as well. So there's a conveyor belt of work and activity that at a project level that EPSO gets involved with. It's very important, not just from the funding point of view, obviously, which helps, but at the same time to give ourselves that sort of credibility, visibility at European level to the wider world as well.
Well, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you, John. Thank you ever so much. I've particularly enjoyed it because you've been able to ask me stuff and I've been asking you stuff at the same time. It's been good to be able to give my side of the story a little bit as well. It's been fascinating talking to you. So thanks very much for your time and for coming in.
Yes, no, absolutely. Much enjoyed. Thank you, Richard, for the opportunity. It's been really, really interesting hearing your perspective on communication dissemination and learning from what you've been doing. So thanks for the opportunity.
And thank you for inviting me here to Brussels. It's actually it was absolutely horrendous weather when we started this podcast, and now it's looking quite sunny. So that's good. Thank you as ever to our listeners for bearing with us for this extra long double bill of a podcast, and we'll see you on the next edition. Thank you very much and goodbye.